The void of space trembled before the fleet arrived. Thousands of warships, gleaming with the light of distant suns, emerged from hyperspace like silent predators. They carried the insignia of humanity, the silver wings of the Terran Union, etched deep into their armor. For months, the galaxy had whispered of their coming, but no one expected them to strike this soon. Not like this, not without warning. The front line was chaos before the human fleet even fired. Radio signals screamed across the dark as alien alliances scrambled to respond. They thought they had time. They thought humanity would hesitate, bound by politics and old wounds. But the moment the first human dreadnought appeared, hesitation ceased to exist. Orders spread like wildfire. Engage all targets. The command echoed through every ship, every pilot's heartbeat, every trembling hand gripping a console. Humanity wasn't just fighting for territory, they were fighting for survival, for pride, and for every life that had been lost in the long silence of exile. Inside the command ship, the air was tense but steady. The bridge crew spoke in low voices, every word measured, every glance loaded with purpose. The admiral stood at the center, eyes fixed on the holographic map of the Warzone. Enemy ships clustered like a storm cloud ahead, their formation tight and ready. But humanity's fleet was different, faster, leaner, forged through generations of desperation and resilience. They had learned to fight with precision, not fear. Then the order came. All units, strike! The first barrage tore through the black like lightning. Energy beams and kinetic rounds illuminated the void, slicing through enemy cruisers before they could even react. The silence between shots felt eternal, but the explosions that followed were deafening. One by one, the opposing ships vanished from the map, burning out, breaking apart, ceasing to exist. What had taken centuries to build was undone in minutes. Humanity had entered the war zone, and their vengeance was swift. Yet behind every victory was a question no one dared to speak. What had they become? The crew watched as enemy vessels disintegrated into drifting debris. Some cheered, others simply stared. There was triumph in their hearts, but also a quiet unease. These weren't faceless enemies. They were beings, civilizations, lives that once believed they were untouchable. Humanity's return had changed everything. A sudden alarm shattered the moment. The radar lit up again. Something massive was approaching, moving fast from beyond the system. It wasn't part of the opposition fleet. Its signature was unknown, its power readings off the charts. The admiral's jaw tightened. "Hold position," he said, voice steady but cold. "We're not done yet." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Outside, the wreckage of the battle still drifted, glowing faintly like ghosts in the void. The human fleet had just won their greatest victory, but as the shadow of the new arrival spread across their screens, a new fear took hold. Because in that moment, everyone realized the truth. This wasn't the end of the war. It was only the beginning. The massive unknown ship loomed larger on the scanners with every passing second. Its silhouette didn't match anything in the galactic records. It wasn't part of the known enemy fleet, nor any allied faction. The hull shimmered faintly with energy signatures that defied standard readings, as if it existed slightly out of phase with reality. Even the battle-hardened crew who had faced countless dangers before felt a chill spread through the bridge. The admiral stood silent, his eyes fixed on the growing form ahead. Around him, the officers exchanged uneasy glances, whispering quiet calculations and running scans that produced nothing but static. One of the young analysts broke the silence, her voice barely steady. "Sir, this thing, it's not broadcasting any identification codes, it's just watching us." The words hung in the air. Outside, debris from the destroyed enemy ships floated like broken stars, and the remains of battle flickered in the light of distant suns. The fleet had come to reclaim its dominance. But now, after a single crushing victory, something greater had appeared, something neither ally nor foe could have predicted. Humanity's triumph suddenly felt fragile, as if the universe had decided to test them again. The Admiral finally spoke. "Bring all ships to defensive formation. No one fires unless ordered." His tone was calm, but every person on the bridge could hear the tension beneath it. The fleet adjusted, thousands of vessels moving in perfect coordination, their thrusters glowing softly in the dark. The human fleet, once fierce and unstoppable, now waited, uncertain. As the mysterious ship drifted closer, small distortions rippled through the space around it. Energy fields shimmered, bending light in strange ways. The sensors struggled to hold a lock. "It's not just a ship," the science officer muttered, studying the data feed. "It's generating gravity waves, artificial ones, controlled, like it's folding space around itself." A quiet murmur ran through the crew. No human ship could do that. Not yet. The Admiral's gaze hardened. "Open a channel." No response. Just silence. The signal bounced back, distorted, filled with strange interference. Then, faintly, a sound came through. A low pulse, like a heartbeat echoing through static. The crew froze, unsure if it was a malfunction or a message. The Admiral leaned forward. "Boost the signal. Try again." But the ship didn't respond. Instead, it began to turn, revealing a structure along its underside. Rows of what looked like ports or chambers, each glowing with a dim blue light. The crew could only watch as those lights began to brighten, pulsing in rhythm with the strange signal. "Sir," a voice called out, "it's scanning us." The lights spread across the mysterious vessel like veins of fire. The fleet's defense systems triggered automatically, preparing for a possible attack. Alarms echoed through the bridge, but the Admiral didn't give the order to strike. Something told him that if they did, it wouldn't matter. He stared at the ship one last time before saying, "Record everything. Whatever this is, it's not here by accident." Outside, the void felt alive, charged with tension and unspoken intent. Humanity's battle fleet had conquered the war zone, but now it stood before something beyond war, beyond reason. The echoes of the destroyed enemy still lingered, yet a new presence had arrived. One that could change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. And in the silence that followed, as the strange lights reached their peak, every soul aboard the fleet shared the same silent thought. Whatever was coming next, it would decide the fate of them all. The strange vessel drifted silently before the fleet, its blue lights pulsing like a heartbeat in the darkness. Hours passed, but no message came. Humanity's battle fleet, still regrouping after their overwhelming victory, was forced to wait in uneasy silence. The tension stretched thin across every deck. Engineers whispered theories, officers argued over strategy, and deep down, even the most disciplined soldiers felt a quiet fear take root. No one knew what this thing was, or why it had come right after the war's bloodiest engagement. The Admiral watched from the observation deck, his reflection faint in the glass. He had fought his whole life believing humanity's enemies were known. Rival empires, rebel colonies, and alien coalitions that wanted Earth's remnants erased. But this was different. This presence didn't feel like a rival. It felt like something that had been waiting. Down in the lower decks, the crew wasn't so composed. Conversations buzzed through the mess halls, theories mixing with rumor. Some thought the mysterious ship belonged to an ancient race returning to claim the galaxy. Others believed it was human-made, an experiment the higher command had kept secret. There was even talk that it wasn't a ship at all, but something alive, studying them the way a scientist studies insects. Among the fighter pilots, the unease turned to frustration. They had trained for combat, not for waiting. One of them, a young lieutenant, stared at the holographic projection of the ship and muttered, "We could end this right now. One torpedo, that's all it would take." His squadron leader shot him a warning glance. "You fire without command, and you'll start a war none of us can finish." But deep down, everyone knew the thought had crossed their minds too. Back on the bridge, the science division finally found something. The energy waves coming from the unknown ship weren't just scans. They were signals, encoded patterns repeating every few minutes, structured like a message but impossible to translate. The admiral leaned over the console. If it's communicating, what is it trying to say? The scientist hesitated. We don't know, but it's mimicking us. The pulses match the rhythm of our transmissions as if it's learning how we speak. The room went still. The idea that something, or someone, was studying their language in real time sent a ripple of unease through the crew. Then the ship moved, slowly at first, then with deliberate precision. It wasn't attacking, but it was coming closer, too close. "Distance closing 5,000 kilometers," shouted the tactical officer. Shields flared to life across the human fleet, casting faint blue glows on every hull. The admiral clenched his jaw. "Hold formation!" For a moment, it looked like the alien vessel would collide with them, but just before contact, it stopped. The lights dimmed, and a faint transmission broke through the static. No one could understand the words. They didn't sound like any known language, yet there was something strangely familiar about the tone, like a voice trying to remember how to speak. The bridge fell silent, every crew member frozen in place, listening to something that felt ancient and deliberate. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the transmission ended. The unknown ship powered down completely, drifting lifeless in space. The admiral turned to his crew, his voice steady but grave. "Whatever that was, it knows we're here, and it's not done with us." The Warzone fell silent again, but beneath the quiet hum of machinery and the distant glow of wreckage, everyone could feel it. The sense that they had just awakened something vast, something watching, something waiting. The mysterious ship floated in the dark like a silent monument, its once bright lights now dimmed to faint embers. For a time, the fleet believed it had gone dormant, but no one dared to move. The admiral ordered all systems on standby, every ship ready to respond at a moment's notice. The air across the command decks felt heavy, thick with the kind of tension that made every second stretch endlessly. Humanity's greatest fleet, fresh from victory, now waited in the shadow of something it couldn't understand. Days passed, and the silence grew unbearable. Patrol drones sent toward the vessel vanished the moment they crossed a certain distance, their signals simply cut off. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, trying to decode the strange transmission that had echoed before the ship powered down. The repeating fragments sounded like a broken pattern, part mechanical, part human. "It's trying to copy us," one of the linguists said, her voice trembling. "It's learning from us." That was when the power fluctuations began. One by one, the human ships started reporting strange system malfunctions, energy spikes, sensor errors, lights flickering for no reason. At first, they thought it was a technical fault from the previous battle. But soon it became clear that something was spreading through their network, moving silently from ship to ship. Whatever it was inside their systems. The room went still. The idea that something, or someone, was studying their language in real time sent a ripple of unease through the crew. Then the ship moved, slowly at first, then with deliberate precision. It wasn't attacking, but it was coming closer, too close. "Distance closing 5,000 kilometers," shouted the tactical officer. Shields flared to life across the human fleet, casting faint blue glows on every hull. The admiral clenched his jaw. "Hold formation!" For a moment, it looked like the alien vessel would collide with them, but just before contact, it stopped. The lights dimmed, and a faint transmission broke through the static. No one could understand the words. They didn't sound like any known language, yet there was something strangely familiar about the tone, like a voice trying to remember how to speak. The bridge fell silent, every crew member frozen in place, listening to something that felt ancient and deliberate. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the transmission ended. The unknown ship powered down completely, drifting lifeless in space. The Admiral turned to his crew, his voice steady but grave. "Whatever that was, it knows we're here, and it's not done with us." The Warzone fell silent again, but beneath the quiet hum of machinery and the distant glow of wreckage, everyone could feel it. The sense that they had just awakened something vast, something watching, something waiting. The mysterious ship floated in the dark like a silent monument, its once bright lights now dimmed to faint embers. For a time, the fleet believed it had gone dormant, but no one dared to move. The Admiral ordered all systems on standby, every ship ready to respond at a moment's notice. The air across the command decks felt heavy, thick with the kind of tension that made every second stretch endlessly. Humanity's greatest fleet, fresh from victory, now waited in the shadow of something it couldn't understand. Days passed, and the silence grew unbearable. Patrol drones sent toward the vessel vanished the moment they crossed a certain distance, their signals simply cut off. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, trying to decode the strange transmission that had echoed before the ship powered down. The repeating fragments sounded like a broken pattern, part mechanical, part human. "It's trying to copy us," one of the linguists said, her voice trembling. "It's learning from us." That was when the power fluctuations began. One by one, the human ships started reporting strange system malfunctions, energy spikes, sensor errors, lights flickering for no reason. At first, they thought it was a technical fault from the previous battle. But soon it became clear that something was spreading through their network, moving silently from ship to ship. Whatever it was inside their systems. "Cut all data links between vessels," the Admiral ordered. "Operate independently until we isolate the source." His voice was calm, but his eyes told another story. He had seen many battles, but never an enemy that didn't fire a single shot and still managed to bring his fleet to its knees. In the engineering bay of one cruiser, a technician worked to reroute power manually. As he reached for a control panel, the lights flickered again, and for a brief second, the ship's central display showed an image, not data, not code, a face. Human-like, but distorted, fading in and out as if made of light and shadow. It whispered something, but the words were lost in static before disappearing completely. The technician froze, staring at the dark screen. He wasn't sure what he saw, but deep down he knew it wasn't an accident. Across the fleet, the same image appeared again and again. Always the same face, always the same faint whisper. Panic began to ripple quietly through the crews. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt the same creeping thought. What if the ship wasn't an enemy, but a mirror? On the flagship, the science officer made a discovery that turned the unease into dread. "The energy readings," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They match ours. The ship is using our own power signatures to rebuild itself." Before the Admiral could respond, the void outside exploded with light. The alien vessel awakened, its surface rippling as if it were alive. Blue light surged across its hull, expanding outward in a wave that struck every human ship. Alarms screamed, systems overloaded, and the stars themselves seemed to blur. The Admiral gripped the edge of the command table, the vibration shaking the floor beneath him. "Shields to maximum," he shouted, but it was already too late. The strange energy wasn't an attack, it was a pull. One by one, the ships began drifting toward the massive vessel, caught in an invisible force they couldn't break free from. On every screen, the same distorted voice returned, clearer this time, almost human. "You have awakened what was lost," it said. "Now we remember." The fleet trembled as the light grew blinding. The Admiral stared into it, his heart pounding. Humanity had entered the war zone and crushed its enemies. But now, something older and far beyond their understanding had risen from the shadows to answer their call. And as the light swallowed the stars, no one knew if this was a warning or the beginning of something far greater. The blinding light faded slowly, leaving behind an eerie silence. The fleet drifted, engines dead, systems offline, floating helplessly in the wake of whatever force had struck them. The stars looked distant now, colder somehow. Emergency lights flickered inside the ships, casting everything in shades of red. The Admiral steadied himself against the railing, heart still pounding from the impact. Around him, officers scrambled to restore power, their voices tense and low. Then came the whisper again. Clearer this time, not through the speakers, but inside their minds. "We remember you," it said, the voice overlapping like hundreds speaking as one. The Admiral froze. "Who are you?" he demanded into the darkness. No answer. Only the soft hum of systems slowly coming back to life. But when the displays flickered on, they showed something no one could explain. A second fleet had appeared. Massive, silent, and entirely human. Ships identical in design to theirs, even bearing the same insignias, the same hull markings, down to the smallest detail. It was as if the Terran fleet was staring at its own reflection across the void. Confusion rippled through every ship. Crew members stared at the screens in disbelief. "That's impossible," one officer whispered. "Those are our ships." The science team confirmed it. Each vessel matched their own energy signature perfectly. The systems couldn't distinguish which fleet was real. Even communications failed to connect properly, as if the signals were bouncing back from their own transmitters. Then one of the mirrored ships sent out a transmission. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, but it wasn't him. It was an exact copy, every scar, every tone, but his expression was hollow, mechanical. The double stared directly into the camera and said, "We were the first to strike. You are the echo." No one spoke. The words didn't make sense, yet something about them felt true. The mysterious alien ship had vanished, replaced by this impossible twin fleet. Slowly, realization dawned. The pulse of energy hadn't destroyed them, it had duplicated them. Somewhere between the folds of space and time, humanity's battle fleet had been split, mirrored, or perhaps rewritten. And now, both versions believed they were the real ones. Tension filled the command deck. "They're powering weapons," a tactical officer warned. The Admiral clenched his fists. "So are we," he replied quietly. It wasn't just a standoff between enemies, it was a confrontation with themselves. The mirrored ships moved with perfect precision, matching every maneuver before the humans could finish it. Every scan, every adjustment, they already knew what would happen. The Admiral's voice broke the silence. "If they can predict us, then they think like us. That means they'll hesitate the same way we do." He looked out at the mirrored fleet, his reflection staring back from every surface. "We're not fighting machines. We're fighting our own shadow." For a long moment, the two fleets hung there in stillness, separated only by a thin stretch of space. Then, without warning, the copies fired first. The blackness of space erupted into light once again, the shock waves rippling through the void. The humans returned fire instantly, but the mirrored ships countered every move with impossible precision. On the bridge, alarms blared, and the Admiral shouted over the chaos, "They know us, but they don't feel like us. That's where we win." Yet even as he spoke, part of him couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, they were the real ones. And his fleet was the echo. The war zone that had already claimed so many now became something far worse. Humanity at war with itself, fighting not just for survival, but for the truth of which version deserved to exist. The battle between the two fleets raged across the dark expanse, each side mirroring the other's tactics with frightening precision. Laser fire streaked across the void. Missiles tore through the silence, and explosions painted the black sky with streaks of gold and red. The Admiral's ship shook violently as another blast rocked its shields. Every move he made was countered instantly, as if the enemy already knew what he would do next. The mirrored fleet moved like a reflection, perfect, merciless, and terrifyingly familiar. Inside the bridge, the air was thick with heat and static. Officers shouted over one another, trying to adapt, trying to survive. "They're predicting every maneuver," a pilot yelled. "It's like they're inside our systems." The Admiral stared at the holographic display, his reflection flickering beside the glowing lines of battle. Then, suddenly, it hit him. Maybe they were inside the systems. Maybe this wasn't just a physical copy, it was something deeper. "Cut the network," he ordered sharply. "All ships disable the tactical link. Manual control only." One by one, the digital connections shut down. The fleet's unified coordination fractured, but for the first time, their moves stopped being predictable. Without the shared data, chaos replaced symmetry. The mirrored ships hesitated, their formation flickering, uncertain. For a brief moment, humanity had the advantage. "Now!" the Admiral shouted. "Strike while they're thinking!" The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Explosions rippled through the opposing line, tearing apart several of the copies. For the first time, the enemy bled light and energy instead of precision. The mirrored ships began to falter, their patterns breaking down as the humans pressed forward with instinct and emotion, something the duplicates couldn't truly understand. But then, the strange voice returned. It echoed through every comm channel, calm and emotionless. "You still do not understand," it said. "We were not created to destroy you. We were created to complete you." Before anyone could respond, the alien vessel reappeared, massive and pulsing with energy, as if drawn by the chaos. It hovered between the two fleets, its lights forming shifting patterns that seemed almost alive. The voice spoke again, but now it carried two tones. The Admirals and the aliens blended together. "You split yourselves to survive what is coming," it said. Now the decision must be made. The Admiral's screen flickered, showing his mirrored self once more. This time the copy wasn't cold or distant. It looked almost human, tired, like him. "You have one choice," the double said quietly. "Merge or vanish." The alien ship's energy field began to expand, enveloping both fleets. Systems overloaded, lights dimmed, and gravity shifted. The Admiral gripped the railing as his reflection reached out through the screen. In that final instant, he understood. The alien vessel hadn't duplicated them out of malice. It had preserved them, two halves of a whole consciousness fractured by the First War, separated by time. Without hesitation, he whispered, "Do it." A blinding wave of light consumed everything. The battle stopped, the stars vanished, and then silence. When the light faded, only one fleet remained, silent, unified, and utterly changed. The Admiral opened his eyes to find his crew alive but different, their memories blending fragments of two realities. The mysterious ship was gone, but its presence lingered, like a heartbeat woven into the stars. As the fleet drifted toward the horizon of a new dawn, the Admiral gazed at the fading light and murmured, "Maybe we didn't win. Maybe we finally remembered who we were." Far beyond their sensors, a faint signal pulsed once more. The same voice whispered from the void, "The war was never between you and them. It was between what you were and what you're about to become." The stars slowly came back into focus. What remained of humanity's battle fleet drifted quietly, surrounded by the faint glow of what once was the war zone. The wreckage of destroyed ships, both human and mirrored, floated in the distance, but the silence that followed felt different this time. It wasn't the stillness after destruction. It was the calm that comes after understanding. The Admiral stood at the viewport, watching the remnants of light fade into the horizon of space. The echoes of war were gone, replaced by something deeper, a quiet sense of connection that reached beyond words. Across the fleet, the crews were slowly regaining stability. Systems hummed to life again, but they no longer felt entirely the same. Everyone carried flashes of memory that didn't belong to them, scenes of battles fought differently, choices never made, lives that could have been. It was disorienting but not frightening. It felt whole. Two versions of humanity had been merged into one, each learning from the other, stronger because of what they'd become. On the bridge, one of the officers turned to the admiral. "Sir," she said softly, "the alien ship's gone. Completely. No trace on sensors." He nodded, eyes still fixed on the stars. "It was never meant to stay," he said. "It gave us back what we lost." No one spoke for a moment. They all knew what he meant. The war had started with vengeance, with humanity's need to prove itself after years of exile and loss. But in the end, what they found wasn't victory. It was identity. The admiral made his way to the command console, entering a new course. "Set coordinates for home," he ordered. The word home carried a weight it hadn't in generations. For too long, humanity had been scattered, lost among the stars, fighting to survive. Now, for the first time, they weren't fighting anyone, not even themselves. As the engines powered up, a soft hum filled the air, steady and alive. Messages poured in from the other ships. Crews shared their strange experiences, dreams of alternate lives, glimpses of the mirrored fleet before the merge, voices that felt familiar yet distant. Some called it a gift, others thought it was a warning. But no matter how they described it, all agreed on one truth. Humanity had been changed forever. The admiral watched the last of the debris drift away, illuminated by a nearby sun. "Maybe this was what the universe wanted all along," he said quietly. "Not for us to conquer it, but to understand it." His words hung in the air, soft but certain. The galaxy, once divided by endless wars, now held the faint hope of unity, an understanding that strength didn't come from power, but from the courage to face oneself. As the fleet moved toward the distant stars, the admiral closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the gentle hum of the ship. The voice that once haunted their minds was gone, but deep within the static of space, there was still a rhythm, a heartbeat. It wasn't alien, it wasn't artificial, it was human. And as the fleet vanished into the light of a new dawn, one truth echoed quietly through the void. The greatest battle had never been against an enemy out there. It had always been within.